What's going on, guys? Happy Friday. In this video, I want to talk about options set to expire today. We're also going to mention how job data might boost the chance of rate cuts. This is breathing a sigh of relief in the market. Even though it's bad data, bad is seen as good when we're looking at the potential for rate cuts. We're also going to talk about the Bitcoin spot ETFs. A few days ago, we saw BlackRock's IBIT post their first outflow, and we have an update from yesterday. And I also want to highlight RIOT's recent earnings and go over their chart. Let's get started. If you guys get something useful out of this, you know what to do. And first off, let's look at Bitcoin. We are seeing a nice recovery day today. Bitcoin miners were up pretty nice in the beginning of the day. They're starting to slowly cool down. We might end the day somewhat flat, but so far Bitcoin's doing pretty good. We seem to be flipping our 61,000 from resistance to support. What I really want to see is a break of this downtrend. You'll see this descending resistance here, this blue descending line. We have hit it a few times. I want to see us break out of it and potentially reverse this downtrend. We're now becoming overbought on the shorter term time frames. We may be due for some consolidation up here at the 61,000 area before we go on our next leg. Looking at the RSI on the daily, we're also facing a descending resistance. Seeing a shift in the trend for the RSI would also be a positive. And because of this recent dip, because of this recent crash, if you want to call it that, Bitcoin on the weekly RSI has cooled down considerably from overbought. Now I want to show you why I don't think we're anywhere near the end of this cycle. There are many indications pointing that out, but one thing is the monthly RSI. You'll see every single Bitcoin halving cycle, we've topped out in the year after the halving. We should have a year to go in this cycle. Roughly. Look at how overbought we became on the monthly RSI every single time in the year after the halving. We did get to overbought on the monthly in this cycle so far, but nowhere near the levels we have seen in the past. And I want to show you the crypto fear and greed index. Actually, first, yesterday we did see fear. Now we're back up to neutral. And check this out. Here's 2021, the peak. We saw over a 90 on the fear and greed index. We topped out here so far at 81 before running all the way back down to 48 on the fear and greed index. I do think we'll see a higher reading once we top out. Now let's talk about some spot Bitcoin ETF stuff. You guys know that the other day we saw an outflow from IBIT. The positive, at least, is they didn't see outflows yesterday. We saw no flows. And Grayscale's GBTC was the only ETF to see an outflow yesterday. Funny enough, ARK Invest's ETF led the pack in inflows with 13 million in inflows. We also had Franklin Templeton's fund, Valkyrie's fund, and Invesco's fund recording 3 million, 2 million, and 1 million respectively. And I'll take that versus what we saw the day before. We saw the largest ever outflow of 563 million. And Fidelity's FBTC had the largest outflow of 191 million. It's obviously going to continue to be important to see what these Bitcoin spot ETFs continue to post. Do we see outflows from IBIT next week? Do we see inflows overall? It is a relief to see them not post outflows 2 days in a row. Hopefully the day before was simply a fluke. But we'll have a better idea of next week once we start seeing what they're posting. And I'm keeping a close eye on IBIT and GBTC. They are soon to flip. They're right around $1 billion away from flipping. And they're about 20,000 Bitcoin away from crossing as well. IBIT has 273,824 Bitcoin currently. And Grayscale has 292,000 Bitcoin. I do expect we see them flip before the middle of May. Perhaps sometime next week even. We also have some news of some US job data that came in under expectations, which is a negative, but it's a positive when you're thinking about rate cuts. US non-farm payrolls data for April came in below expectations. Seeing some of this labor market weakness gives us a slight increase of probability that we're going to see rate cuts. I personally think we're lucky if we see one this year. If something breaks before then, maybe we see more rate cuts. But if we keep getting the type of inflation data that we've been getting, it's definitely going to be a rough year. And I probably didn't mention this in previous videos, but we did get GDP somewhat recently and it came in below expectations. So we have a weakening labor market, we have GDP coming in under expectations, and we have inflation metrics like CPI, PCE coming in higher than expected. Inflation is showing to be higher than expected. Now, who's been buying Bitcoin while it's been down? I'm sure you know, the whales. Bitcoin whales have accumulated 47,000 Bitcoin in the last 24 hours. And this area below 60,000 has been a popular area for buying the dip. And look at the Bitcoin on whale addresses just skyrocketing. This is not the time to think Bitcoin has topped out. This is not the time to think the halving's already happened. It's time to pack your bags and go. Look at all the past halving cycles and realize that this is essentially what happens every time. The halving hits, you get a little anticipatory run beforehand. You get a little bit of excitement. The catalyst happens and then you see a little bit of a slow period. Short-term traders take profits. New longs start entering. and then the bull market slowly continues on down the road. And considering how this cycle we now have institutional adoption, we have spot Bitcoin ETFs, we have seen all-time highs before the halving, which is a first. And I don't know, to me, this just seems like the cycle you definitely want to be in. We have Bitcoin miners posting profits, and yes, this is before the halving took effect, this is before rewards got cut in half, but last cycle we didn't see this. We saw many miners not even post profits at the peak of the Bitcoin bull run. This time around, I do expect pretty good profitability across the board. Bitcoin back at its all-time highs, and many of these miners, if not all of them damn near, are profitable, even with the halving cutting the rewards. Now before I make this too long of a video, let's look at these options expiring. Bitcoin and Ethereum options worth 2.4 billion are set to expire today, May 3rd, with max Bitcoin pain at 61,000. Kind of explains why we saw this recent drop, kind of explains why we're right here in the 61,000 area. We're at that max pain level while options are expiring. Market makers got to make their money. And this maximum pain point, if you didn't know, refers to the price at which the asset will cause financial losses to the greatest number of holders. People buying the calls and people buying the puts at this certain price. This is max pain for the majority of them. And looking at Ethereum contracts, they have a max pain at 3,000. Oh, and would you look at that? These options are set to expire today, and Ethereum is right here at that max pain level, right around $3,000. Moving right along, I want to talk about RIOT briefly. RIOT did report earnings recently. They missed revenue expectations, but they beat earnings estimates, and they did post a profitable quarter. And as said by the RIOT CEO, this quarter, RIOT reported net income of $211 million and earnings per share of 82 cents per share, which are new record highs for our quarterly results. Additionally, we reported $245 million in adjusted EBITDA for the quarter, another record high for RIOT, rounding out strong financial performance for the quarter. Also, recently deployed miners at their Corsicana facility are already hashing, and RIOT is on track to increase its self-mining hash rate to 31 exahash by year's end. RIOT anticipates 3 pending orders that will add an estimated 28 exahash to its self-mining capacity. Therefore, once fully deployed, the new miners from RIOT are expected to push its total self-mined hash rate capacity to 41 exahash. Now, RIOT surprisingly didn't react much to earnings. It's kind of just being pushed around with all the Bitcoin miners right now. Looking at a recent run from 17th, 18th of April, we have retraced on the Fibonacci right to that 618 level. Perhaps now we can retest these moving averages that we failed last time here. Once we break both the 50 and the 200 MA, I do expect us to work towards our resistance in the 17 area. Keep in mind we do have a gap down here in the 9s. Perhaps we have to fill that first and then we can go on our run. Maybe if next week we get some more outflows from IBIT, we can see RIOT come down and fill its gap. I honestly like RIOT where it's at. It's only 200% up from its bear market lows. Other miners, for example, like CleanSpark is 8x from its bear market lows. I think RIOT has a lot of value. It's still 50% from its top. It really hasn't moved much yet from pricing in the halving. Many of these miners dropped 50% right around it. Very ironic. And still many are down roughly 50%. I do think now is a good time to be buying a stock like RIOT. According to the Heikinashi candles, we may be just starting a new uptrend. And you know, this was a $70-something stock in the last Bitcoin bull run. Do I think it's going to get to the 70s this cycle? Not necessarily. But if they can post profitability consistently, I see no reason why a stock like RIOT can't one day demand a $10 billion market cap, which would place it right around the 30s. I think that's reasonable for the peak of this bull run. Say Bitcoin's in the triple digits, pushing 140, 150 or something towards the peak, and RIOT's in the 30s, it would not be surprising, especially if we see somewhat consistent profitability. I do think from here, RIOT is a solid 3x. And who knows, maybe it does better, maybe it does worse. One thing I'm certain of is when we look back, we will miss the 10s. And thanks as always for watching, guys. I hope you have a good weekend. What upcoming miners earnings are you watching out for next week? It's definitely going to be a busy week next week. And so far so good. You know, we saw pretty good earnings from SDIG. We saw good earnings from RIOT. Yes, they missed revenue, but they did see a profitable quarter. And perhaps with Bitcoin's options expiring today and Ethereum options expiring today, maybe next week we can go and run where the market wants to run. I am watching the descending resistance I showed you guys on Bitcoin. Once we break out of that, I do think the market will see a reaction there. And it'll continue to be important to see what IBIT posts and the spot Bitcoin ETFs in general, obviously. And soon, within a week, maybe 2 weeks, we will see IBIT flip GBTC. And I do really think the market will see it as a positive. And we'll see how it reacts very soon. But thanks again, guys, and I will see you next time.